The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. At first, the team at Lunar Command Center thought it was a system error. The long-range scanners had never picked up signals like these before. Admiral John Bedford was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alert reached his desk. He nearly spilled the hot liquid across his uniform as he read the report. After 30 years in Earth's Defense Force, he had always known this day might come. Humanity was not alone. "Get me Captain Grant," he barked at his assistant. "And call an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs." 60 minutes later, Captain Lisa Grant walked into the command center. Her eyes were sharp despite the early hour. As a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, she had seen more combat than most officers twice her age. "You've heard?" Bedford asked. Lisa nodded. "Alien contact. Is it confirmed?" Bedford pointed to the main screen where a strange ship hung against the blackness of space just beyond Neptune's orbit. It was massive, at least 3 kilometers long, with a design unlike anything humans had built. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "This is just the first," Bedford said quietly. "Our deep space arrays have detected 23 more approaching from the same vector." Before Lisa could respond, the screen flickered. The image of the ship disappeared, replaced by a figure that was almost human-like but not quite. Its skin was pale blue, with ridges where eyebrows should be. When it spoke, its mouth moved wrong, as if the words were being forced through unfamiliar muscle patterns. "People of Earth, I am Ambassador Zortal of the Zarkian Empire, master of 200 worlds across this spiral arm. Your planet has been charted and added to our expansion directive. You will submit to Imperial authority within 30 standard days, or face immediate pacification." The message repeated twice more before cutting out. By evening, the recording had been shared with every major government on Earth. President Susan Mitchell called an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. "They've scanned our defenses," the Secretary of Defense explained to the grim-faced leaders. "Our orbital platforms, our ships, our weapon systems, everything we have visible." "And?" the Russian representative asked. "And they're laughing at us. Literally. We intercepted communications between their vessels. They're comparing our military capability to something called nestlings in their language. Apparently, we're about as threatening as babies." President Mitchell stood up. At 62, she had led the United States through economic crisis and regional conflicts, but nothing had prepared her for this. "What options do we have?" she asked plainly. The room fell silent until a man in a rumpled suit stood up from the back row. This was Alan Porter, chief engineer of the Global Space Initiative. He wasn't supposed to speak at meetings like this, but today was different. "Madam President, there's something you need to know," he said. "About Project Thunderbolt. Security." Officers moved to escort Porter out, but Mitchell waved them away. "Let him speak." Porter approached the central table and placed a small device in the center. It projected a hologram of what appeared to be a modified spacecraft engine. 10 years ago, after we detected unusual radio emissions from the Tau Ceti system, several nations secretly agreed to fund research into faster-than-light travel. Project Thunderbolt was born. Murmurs rippled through the room. "We've had breakthroughs," Porter continued. "Dr. Kevin Wright developed a model that works on principles completely different from conventional physics. We've been testing prototypes in the asteroid belt, away from observation." "Are you telling me we have FTL capability?" Mitchell asked, incredulously. "Not just capability, Madam President. We have ships, 30 of them, retrofitted in secret facilities on Mars and in the asteroid belt." The Chinese representative pounded his fist on the table. "This is a violation of international space treaties. Why were we not informed?" "Because," Porter said simply, "we needed absolute secrecy. Our approach to FTL travel creates no detectable radiation signature. It leaves no spatial distortion. It's completely different from anything theorized in public scientific literature." He paused, allowing his next words to land with full impact. "And based on our analysis of the alien vessel's propulsion system, their FTL method is nothing like ours. They don't know what we have." President Mitchell took a deep breath. Can these ships fight? A new voice answered from the doorway. They can do more than fight, Madam President. All heads turned to see a woman in her 40s wearing a naval uniform with captain's insignia. Captain Samantha Wells, Earth Defense Force, she introduced herself. I command the EDF Valiant, first of the Thunderbolt fleet. Our ships were designed for exploration, but when we detected the Zarkion fleet 6 months ago, we quickly adapted them for defense. She walked to the hologram and expanded it to show a sleek vessel with minimal weapons ports. We don't need large weapons arrays. Our FTL system allows us to appear anywhere, strike, and vanish before the enemy can respond. We've developed entirely new combat doctrines based on this capability. Admiral Bedford, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. What Captain Wells isn't telling you is that she and her crew have been training for this scenario specifically. They've run over 500 simulations against the Zarkion ship configurations. President Mitchell studied the hologram carefully. The aliens have given us 30 days. Can we be ready? We're ready now, Wells replied confidently. But I recommend we use the time to our advantage. Let them think we're preparing to surrender, while actually preparing to strike back, Mitchell concluded. Outside the meeting room, normal citizens went about their lives unaware of what was coming. In Florida, an older couple watched the news about strange signals detected in space. In Chicago, children played in parks while their parents discussed rumors of unusual military movements. None of them knew that beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Kevin Wright was making final adjustments to his revolutionary drive system. Or that in a hidden asteroid base, Lieutenant Peter Garcia was running combat drills with his tactical team. The Zarkion ships moved closer each day, their sensors detecting only what Earth wanted them to see, a primitive civilization with basic space capability and conventional weapons. They saw the evacuation drills and the stockpiling of resources. To them, these looked like the desperate acts of a species preparing for occupation. What they couldn't see was humanity's greatest advantage, the ability to think differently, to solve problems in ways the older civilization had never considered. In her quarters aboard the Valiant, Captain Wells studied the alien fleet formations one last time before sleep. 30 days would pass quickly, and then humanity would show the Empire exactly what they had overlooked. The clock was ticking. The hidden shipyard floated silently in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter. To any casual observer, it looked like just another cluster of asteroids. This was by design. For the past 8 years, engineers and workers had hollowed out the largest rocks, creating vast chambers where ships could be built away from prying eyes. Captain Samantha Wells stood at the viewport of her quarters aboard the EDF Valiant, watching as technicians in spacesuits swarmed around the hull. The ship was sleek and purposeful, nothing like the bulky transports that Earth officially used for its Mars colonies. The Valiant was built for speed and surprise, not brute force. Captain, the crew is assembled in the briefing room, said a voice from the doorway. Wells turned to see Lieutenant Peter Garcia, her tactical officer. At 32, Garcia had never seen actual combat, but his mind worked in ways that impressed even veterans. He could see patterns and possibilities that others missed. Thank you, Peter. I'll be right there. In the briefing room, 30 men and women sat in perfect attention. They represented the best of Earth's defense forces, pilots, engineers, tactical specialists, all chosen for their ability to think creatively. As you know, Wells began, we have 25 days left before the Zarkion ultimatum expires. Today we begin full combat drills. She nodded to Communications Officer Kelly Howard, who projected a hologram of the alien fleet. Thanks to our stealth probes, we now have detailed scans of their ships. Their technology is advanced, but it follows predictable patterns. Their FTL drive creates a specific energy signature before and after jumps, leaving them vulnerable for approximately 2.3 seconds. Chief Medical Officer Daniel Brown raised his hand. What about their weapons systems? Their primary weapons are energy-based, similar to our laser platforms, but significantly more powerful, Garcia answered. However, they're designed to target large objects at predictable velocities. Our FTL jumps will make us virtually impossible to hit if we time them right. Wells nodded. This is why we'll be running jump drills every 4 hours. Our advantage isn't firepower, it's unpredictability. After the briefing, Wells made her way to the engineering section where Dr. Kevin Wright was making final adjustments to the FTL drive. Unlike the rest of the crew in their crisp uniforms, Wright wore simple jeans and a faded t-shirt. His wild gray hair made him look more like an artist than a scientist who had revolutionized physics. "How's she looking, Kevin?" Wells asked. Wright didn't look up from his calculations. "Beautiful. The latest simulations show we can make up to 15 consecutive jumps before needing a cooldown cycle. That's 3 more than last week. And the targeting accuracy? Down to 500 meters even for jumps across the solar system. We can literally appear right behind them, fire, and disappear before their sensors register our presence." Wells smiled. "You realize what you've done, don't you? You've changed everything." Wright finally looked up, his eyes serious behind thick glasses. "I just followed the math where it led me. The Empire's scientists were so stuck in their way of thinking that they missed an entire branch of physics." He typed a command into his console, bringing up a comparison of the 2 FTL methods. The alien system pushed through space like a drill through wood, brute force that required massive energy. The human system was different. It didn't push through space. It slipped between its layers, using minimal energy, but requiring incredibly precise calculations. 20 years ago, when we detected their communications, everyone panicked, Wright said quietly. But I was excited. Their signals contained enough information about their technology that I could see what they were missing. They've had FTL for 1,000 years, but they stopped innovating. They never questioned their fundamental assumptions. Wells placed a hand on his shoulder. And now we have the advantage. Across the solar system, Admiral Bedford coordinated with military leaders from every nation. For once, old enemies worked together, united by a common threat. Chinese space forces practiced evacuation procedures that would convince the aliens. They were preparing to surrender. Russian orbital platforms made small, deliberate errors in their defensive alignments, creating weaknesses that looked unintentional. Every visible human asset was positioned to tell a story of fear and submission. Meanwhile, in a conference room on board the Zarkian command vessel, Lieutenant Kazanar reported to his superior. "The humans continue to prepare for our arrival," he said, showing footage of Earthships moving civilians from orbital stations. "They appear to be consolidating their population centers. Their military vessels are gathering near their moon, possibly for a last stand." Ambassador Zortal nodded with satisfaction. "As expected. This species shows wisdom in accepting the inevitable. Have they attempted to communicate with us again?" "Yes, Ambassador. Their leader sent another message requesting more time. It was appropriately respectful." Zortal smiled, revealing pointed teeth. "Deny the request, of course. Fear is a useful tool during these transitions. The sooner they understand their place, the easier the integration will be." Neither of them questioned their intelligence reports. Why would they? The Zarkian Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, and none had ever truly surprised them. Their analysts saw exactly what they expected to see: a primitive species with basic space travel and conventional weapons, preparing for defeat. Back on the Valiant, Wells supervised the first full combat drill. The ship accelerated to half-light speed, then made a series of rapid FTL jumps around a simulated enemy fleet. Each jump lasted only seconds before the ship vanished again, reappearing at another strategic position. Lieutenant Garcia tracked their performance from the tactical station. "We're still a half-second slow on the third jump sequence," he reported. "Targeting solutions are good, but we need that extra speed if we're facing multiple opponents." Wells nodded. "Run it again. Focus on that transition between points Charlie and Delta." As they practiced, engineers on 29 other ships did the same. The Thunderbolt fleet was small compared to the Empire's armada, but each ship could appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles. In his private quarters, Dr. Wright reviewed the data from the test jumps. The results were better than he had hoped. He thought back to his early research, when everyone said his theories were impossible. Even after they detected alien signals, most scientists focused on replicating what they thought the aliens must use. Only Wright and his small team had looked for a completely different approach. Now, as the deadline approached, 30 ships waited silently in the asteroid belt, hidden from the Empire's scans. They represented humanity's best hope, not just for survival but for victory. 20 days remained until the Empire expected Earth's surrender. 20 days for the crews to perfect their skills. 20 days before humanity would show the galaxy that being underestimated could be the greatest advantage of all. Day 30 arrived with a cold silence. The Zarkian fleet moved past Neptune's orbit, their massive ships casting long shadows across space. 24 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals that absorbed and redirected light, making them seem to shimmer like mirages in the vacuum. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the night sky, knowing what was coming but unaware of the plan to stop. They had been told to trust their leaders, to remain calm, to follow evacuation procedures. Many prayed. Some rioted. Most simply waited. Admiral Bedford stood in the Lunar Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching fleet. His uniform was pressed perfectly, his face a mask of calm that hid his inner tension. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. "They're hailing us," said a young officer at the communications station. Bedford nodded. "Put it through to the president first, then broadcast it globally as planned." In the White House, President Susan Mitchell sat alone in the Oval Office. When the screen before her flickered to life, she straightened her back and lifted her chin. She would show no fear. Ambassador Zortal's blue face filled the screen. His expression was one of amused satisfaction. "President Mitchell, the deadline has expired. What is your answer?" Mitchell's voice was steady. "The people of Earth have considered your demands carefully, Ambassador. We request a 48-hour extension to finalize our transition plans." Zortal laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "There will be no extension. Your delay tactics are transparent. I see your orbital platforms powering weapons. I see your ships moving into defensive positions. These are not the actions of a species preparing to submit." He leaned closer to the screen. "No matter. It makes little difference whether you resist or not. The outcome will be the same." The transmission cut off abruptly. Moments later, reports flooded in from around the solar system. The Zarkian ships had begun to move, spreading out to surround Earth and its colonies. In Florida, Lieutenant Garcia's parents watched the news with growing fear. Their son had disappeared 6 months ago, called away on a special assignment he couldn't discuss. Now, as they saw alien ships entering Earth orbit, they wondered if they would ever see him again. "He's out there somewhere," his father said quietly. "Fighting for us." His mother nodded, her eyes fixed on the window where strange lights now appeared in the midday sky. The alien ships were visible even in daylight, descending through the atmosphere in dozens of locations around the globe. On Mars, the human colony raised white flags as instructed. When Zarkian ships approached, the colonial governor transmitted surrender codes and ordered all defenses powered down. The aliens seemed surprised by the immediate capitulation, scanning the colony multiple times as if searching for hidden weapons. There were none. Mars was exactly what it appeared to be, defenseless. This confused the Zarkian commanders. Their intelligence had identified Mars as a military outpost, yet now it seemed to be nothing more than a civilian settlement. They sent troops to secure the colony anyway, their soldiers marching through the biodomes with weapons raised. Back on Earth, Admiral Bedford activated a secure channel to every military command center around the world. "Initialize Operation Hornet's Nest," he ordered. "Phase 1 begins now." Across the planet, Earth's conventional military forces engaged the alien ships. Fighter jets scrambled to meet landing craft. Orbital defense platforms fired their railguns at the larger vessels. Ground troops moved into defensive positions around major cities. It looked like humanity fighting for survival. It was actually something else entirely, a carefully choreographed distraction. Ambassador Zortal watched the battle reports with mild interest. The humans were fighting harder than expected, but it hardly mattered. Their weapons barely scratched the Imperial ship's armor. Their tactics were predictable. Within hours, Zarkian forces had established footholds in 17 strategic locations around the planet. The resistance is most fierce in this region, reported Lieutenant Kaznar, highlighting North America on a holographic map. Their military leadership appears to be concentrated there. Zortal nodded. Focus our main force on that continent. Once their command structure falls, the rest will surrender quickly. As he spoke, hundreds of Zarkian ships descended toward the United States. Special attention was given to military bases and government centers. The White House, Pentagon, and major command installations were all targeted for immediate capture. What the Empire didn't know was that these facilities were now mostly empty. The real command center for Earth's defense had moved to a hardened bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains days ago. From this hidden location, Admiral Bedford monitored the invasion. His expression remained neutral as he watched Earth's visible defenses being overwhelmed. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "Sir," said a communications officer, "the Valiant reports ready. All Thunderbolt ships are in position." Bedford checked the time. The aliens had been engaged for exactly 3 hours, long enough to commit their forces but not long enough to secure their positions. "Send the signal," he ordered. "Operation Hornet's Nest, Phase 2. In the asteroid belt, Captain Samantha Wells received the transmission. She turned to her bridge crew, all of whom had been waiting tensely for this moment. "This is it," she said simply. "Stations, everyone." Lieutenant Garcia took his place at tactical, his fingers dancing across the controls as he finalized targeting solutions. Communications Officer Howard monitored enemy transmissions, while Dr. Wright made last-minute adjustments to the FTL drive from engineering. "All systems optimal," reported the ship's executive officer. "The fleet report's ready." Wells settled into her command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility. She had trained for this moment for years, but now that it had arrived, she felt a moment of doubt. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. If it failed, Earth would fall. She pushed the doubt aside and opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Wells. You know your targets and your roles. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Execute jump sequence Alpha on my mark." She paused, thinking of all the people counting on them. Garcia's parents in Florida, the colonists on Mars, billions of others who had no idea help was coming. Mark. In perfect synchronization, 30 ships disappeared from the asteroid belt. No energy signature, no spatial distortion. One moment they were there and the next they simply weren't. The Zarkian Emperor, watching the invasion from his palace 20 light-years away, received regular updates on the Earth operation. He was mildly interested in this new conquest, but not concerned. His empire had absorbed hundreds of worlds, and Earth seemed no different from the others. Primitive, disorganized, doomed. Then the reports from his fleet stopped coming. The Zarkian Emperor Vordak reclined on his floating throne, watching the holographic display of Earth's conquest with mild interest. Around him, court officials and military advisors spoke in hushed tones, not wanting to disturb their ruler's entertainment. The subjugation of a new world was always cause for celebration in the imperial palace. "Primitive weapons," the emperor commented as Earth's conventional defenses fired at his ships. "They still use chemical propellants and physical projectiles." "How quaint." His Grand Admiral bowed deeply. "Indeed, Your Eminence. Their most advanced weapons are simple directed energy beams, barely able to warm our outer hull plating. And their space capabilities? Limited to their own solar system. They've established a few colonies on nearby planets, but they have no true FTL capability. Their fastest ships would take decades to reach even the closest star systems." The Emperor nodded, satisfied. Earth would make a fine addition to the Empire, rich in resources and with a large population that could be put to work in imperial factories and mines. Another jewel in his vast collection of conquered worlds. Then something unexpected happened. On the display, one of the Imperial warships, the mighty dreadnought Eternal Glory, suddenly erupted in flames along its port side. "What was that?" the Emperor demanded. The Grand Admiral looked confused. I'm not certain, Your Eminence, checking now. Before he could get an answer, another Imperial ship was hit. Then another. The Emperor leaned forward, his amusement turning to concern as he watched his fleet begin to take damage from an unseen enemy. In Earth orbit, chaos erupted among the Zarkion fleet. Captain Wells's Valiant appeared directly behind the alien command ship, fired 6 high-energy torpedoes at its engine section, and vanished before the enemy could respond. The torpedoes struck home, crippling the vessel's propulsion system. 3 seconds later, the Valiant reappeared 2,000 kilometers away, attacking another target before jumping again. Each time the ship materialized, it stayed just long enough to fire its weapons before disappearing into another FTL jump. The rest of the Thunderbolt fleet followed the same strategy. They appeared, attacked, and vanished in a carefully choreographed dance that left the Imperial forces firing at empty space. On the bridge of the Valiant, Lieutenant Garcia tracked the positions of all 30 human ships, coordinating their attacks to create maximum confusion. The Empire ships are starting to break formation, he reported. They're trying to create a defensive sphere, but they can't predict where we'll appear next. Captain Wells nodded. Good. Communications, what are you picking up? Officer Kelly. Howard listened intently to the intercepted alien transmissions. They're confused, Captain. Their commanders are demanding explanations. They keep asking each other where we came from and what's happening. Wells allowed herself a small smile. Let's increase their confusion. Execute pattern Bravo. The human fleet changed tactics. Instead of attacking random targets, they now focused on specific ships, surrounding a single enemy vessel from multiple angles before jumping away. This new pattern further disrupted the Imperial fleet's attempts to establish a coherent defense. Aboard, the Imperial flagship Ambassador Zortel grabbed a junior officer by the throat. Explain this. How are they doing this? Where did these ships come from? We don't know, sir, gasped the officer. They appear and disappear without warning. Our sensors can't track them. They don't use jump points or create distortion fields like our FTL drives. Impossible. No species has developed alternative FTL technology. Check the asteroid belt. Check Mars. Check everywhere. But the scans showed nothing. The human ships were like ghosts, materializing to strike and vanishing before they could be targeted. In his engineering section, Dr. Wright monitored the FTL drive's performance. The system was operating perfectly, allowing jumps with precision that would have been impossible with conventional technology. Each time the drive activated, it folded space around the ship in a way that was undetectable to Imperial sensors, calibrated to spot their own form of FTL travel. Coolant systems nominal, he reported. We can maintain this jump frequency for another 40 minutes before needing a recharge cycle. As the battle continued, Admiral Bedford watched from his command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The holographic display showed the positions of all ships, both human and alien. The Imperial fleet was slowly being picked apart, unable to defend against enemies they couldn't track or predict. Send the signal to Captain Wells, Bedford ordered. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the most daring part of the plan. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, the human ships would now coordinate their jumps to appear simultaneously around key enemy vessels, overwhelming them with concentrated fire before they could react. Lieutenant Garcia called this the thunderclap maneuver. It required precise timing and coordination between multiple ships, something that had never been attempted in actual combat. All ships, this is Valiant, Wells broadcast to her fleet. Prepare for thunderclap. Primary target is the enemy flagship. Execute on my mark. 5 human ships, including the Valiant, jumped simultaneously. They appeared in a perfect pentagon formation around the Imperial flagship, fired all weapons in a synchronized barrage, and jumped away before the enemy point. Defenses could respond. The flagship's shields collapsed under the assault. A second thunderclap strike targeted its weapon systems, leaving it defenseless. On Earth, people watched in amazement as the seemingly invincible alien ships began to explode or drift powerless in orbit. News spread quickly. Humanity was fighting back and somehow impossibly winning. In Florida, Garcia's parents saw the lights in the sky change. The threatening alien vessels were now the ones under attack, their hulls glowing from weapons impacts. "I told you he was out there fighting for us," Garcia's father said, putting an arm around his wife's shoulders. In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched in stunned silence as his invasion force was systematically dismantled. Ship after ship reported critical damage or total systems failure. The neat formations had dissolved into chaotic individual actions, as each captain tried desperately to defend against attackers they couldn't predict or counter. "This is unprecedented," the Grand Admiral whispered. "They're using some form of FTL technology we've never encountered before." The Emperor's face darkened with rage. "You told me they had no FTL capability. You told me they were primitive. All our intelligence indicated your intelligence was wrong." The Emperor stood, his ceremonial robes swirling around him. "Send reinforcements immediately. I want Earth reduced to ash." But reinforcements would take days to arrive, and by then it might already be too late. In Earth orbit, Ambassador Zortal's flagship drifted powerless, its engines destroyed and weapons disabled. The ambassador himself stared out the viewport, watching as his mighty fleet was reduced to wreckage by an enemy he had openly mocked just hours earlier. For the first time in his long career as a conqueror of worlds, Zortal felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Captain Samantha Wells stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the main view screen as the crippled Zarkian flagship drifted against the backdrop of Earth. Around it, the once mighty Imperial fleet was in ruins. Some ships were completely destroyed, others disabled and powerless. A few had attempted to flee only to be chased down by the nimble human vessels. "Status report," Wells ordered, her voice steady despite the exhaustion of 12 hours of continuous battle. Lieutenant Garcia looked up from his tactical station. 22 enemy vessels disabled or destroyed. 2 attempting to retreat toward Neptune. The Dauntless and Courage are in pursuit. Casualties? "We've lost the Defiant and the Guardian. 3 other ships reporting damage but still operational. Total human casualties." Garcia paused, his expression pained. 47 confirmed dead, 63 injured. Wells nodded solemnly. Even in victory, the cost had been high. But compared to what might have been, the enslavement or destruction of an entire planet, it was a price they had been willing to pay. Communications Officer Howard opened a channel to the enemy flagship. Howard worked her controls. "Channel open, Captain." Wells straightened her uniform and faced the screen. "This is Captain Samantha Wells of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled. You have no reinforcements within range. Surrender now, or what remains of your forces will be destroyed." The screen flickered, then showed Ambassador Zortal. His blue skin was paler than before, his normally perfect posture now slumped. Behind him, smoke filled the bridge of his once mighty vessel. "This is impossible," he said, his voice barely audible. "You had no such technology. Our intelligence was thorough. You had no FTL capability." "Your intelligence was wrong," Wells replied simply. "Do you surrender?" Zortal seemed to struggle with the concept. In the 1,000-year history of the Zarkian Empire, surrender had always been something others did, never the Empire itself. I need to consult with the Emperor. You have 1 hour. After that, we resume our attack." As the communication ended, cheers erupted across the bridge. Wells allowed it for a moment before raising her hand for silence. "This isn't over yet," she cautioned. "Maintain battle stations. Lieutenant Garcia, prepare a boarding party. If they surrender, we'll need to secure their command ship." In the hidden command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Bedford received the news with quiet satisfaction. He immediately contacted President Mitchell, who had remained in the secure bunker throughout the battle. "Madam President, the alien fleet has been defeated. Their ambassador is considering our terms of surrender." Mitchell's eyes widened. "Surrender? We're dictating terms to them." "Yes, ma'am. Captain Wells has given them 1 hour to decide." Mitchell sat back, taking a moment to process this unexpected turn of events. What had begun as a desperate plan to ensure humanity's survival had turned into something much more. A decisive victory that would change Earth's place in the galaxy forever. Have Captain Wells bring the ambassador to Earth as soon as possible. We need to begin negotiations. Aboard the Valiant, Dr. Kevin Wright was examining the damaged components of their FTL drive. The continuous jumps had pushed the system to its limits, but it had performed perfectly. As he worked, he couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. For years, his theories had been dismissed by the scientific establishment. Now, those same theories had saved humanity. "Dr. Wright," said a voice over the intercom, "your presence is requested in the briefing room." In the briefing room, Wright found Captain Wells with a small group of officers. To his surprise, they were joined by 3 Zarkion scientists, escorted by armed guards. The aliens looked at Wright with expressions of confusion and reluctant admiration. "Dr. Wright," Wells said, "these gentlemen have requested to meet you. They're the chief scientist from the Imperial flagship. They want to understand how our FTL system works." One of the aliens stepped forward. "Your technology defies our understanding. We detected no spatial distortions, no energy signatures. It was as if your ship simply disappeared and reappeared elsewhere. This should be impossible." Wright smiled. "Not impossible, just different. Your approach to FTL travel focuses on pushing through space-time. Ours focuses on slipping between its layers." He drew a simple diagram on a tablet, showing the fundamental difference between the two approaches. The alien scientists gathered around, their expressions changing from confusion to wonder as they began to understand. "But this would require an entirely different understanding of quantum mechanics," one scientist protested. "Exactly," Wright replied. "You've been using the same FTL method for 1,000 years. You stopped looking for alternatives. We had to find another way." On Earth, news of the victory spread rapidly. Celebrations erupted in cities and towns across the planet. People who had been preparing for occupation or extinction now poured into the streets, hugging strangers and waving improvised flags. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged triumphant. In the White House, restored to operation after the alien retreat, President Mitchell prepared to address the United Nations. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, all eager to hear about the new reality facing Earth. "Today," Mitchell began, "we take our place among the stars not as subjects, but as equals. The Zarkian Empire has agreed to recognize Earth as a sovereign power. They have withdrawn all claims to our planet and its colonies." She paused, looking around the room. "But this is only the beginning. We have learned that the galaxy is filled with other species, many of them oppressed by the Empire for centuries. They have reached out to us seeking alliance. They see in us something they desperately need, hope." Admiral Bedford stood at attention behind her, his chest swelling with pride. The plan had worked better than anyone could have hoped. Earth was not only safe but was now positioned to become a major power in galactic politics. Across the solar system, engineer Alan Porter oversaw the expansion of the hidden shipyards. With the secret now revealed, there was no need to hide anymore. The next generation of FTL ships would be bigger, faster, and more advanced than the prototypes that had saved Earth. Captain Wells received new orders. The Valiant would lead a diplomatic mission to nearby star systems, establishing contact with other species and building alliances. Lieutenant Garcia was promoted to commander for his role in developing the tactics that had won the battle. And Dr. Kevin Wright returned to his laboratory, already working on improvements to his revolutionary drive system. The Empire's scientists had provided valuable information about conventional FTL technology, which Wright was now incorporating into his own designs. 6 months after the battle, a new coalition began to form. Free worlds united by their desire for independence from imperial rule. At its center was Earth, the planet that had done what no other could. Faced the mighty Zarkian Empire and forced it to retreat. The empire that had once mocked Earth's small army now watched with growing concern as humanity's influence spread across the stars. They had learned a painful lesson. Never underestimate a species that thinks differently. Never mock what you do not understand. And never, ever give humanity a reason to prove you wrong.